appeal your opportunity for closing argument.
Excuse me. Sorry, I've had a cold.
All right.
Kanaka, lama oukou akua.
Ms. Teo, I don't mind you doing it, but please be advised, I don't understand Hawaiian.
Okay, I'm actually reading from the Hawaii State Constitution.
Okay, well, I still don't understand
Okay,
Hawaiian.
I will. Naka, lama oukou akua, lama hoi, ke kanaka nui, Amoe, kanaka iki. Hele, elemakule, luahine, Amoe ke kama, Amoe ke ohe mea nana opilikia. Hewa no make. People, malama, care for that which is divine. Take care of the people great and the people small. Let the old people, the old men, the old women, with the children, let them be free to lay in the road, in any path, without fear of being troubled. Hewa no make. Anyone who breaks this law shall fall. This is the first and still the most important law in Hawaii. It was spoken by Kamehameha I in 1797. It is in Article 9, Section 10 of the Constitution of the State of Hawaii. It is in the center of the badge of the Honolulu Police Department. It is the foundation of the relationship between government and people. It declares that people have a right not to be harmed by those with power. According to this sacred law, kanawai mamalahoi, any governmental power that breaks this fundamental law, that does not respect the basic human and civil rights of the people, will perish. I stand today and always for kanawai mamalahoi. I am not a criminal. I am a witness. I am a witness to great suffering, abuse, and disregard for human rights. I am a witness to the breaking of kanawai mamalahoi by the state of Hawaii. I am a minister, a peacemaker, and a spiritual practitioner of pono. I'm a laymaker and a mother. I have an obligation to pono. I have an obligation to perpetuate my traditions, uncontaminated by commercial and political exploitation, untainted by abuse and untruth, and pass them on to my children and others intact. I have an obligation to safeguard human rights so that my children and their children can live in a Hawaii in which they are not illegal for being themselves, for being kanaka maoli. In a Hawaii where your children, all of our children, and their children can live in a Hawaii where there is still such a thing as real Hawaiian culture, such a thing as real Hawaiians who know the heartbeat of the land because they can still hear it when they moe I ke ala. I cannot turn away from these obligations, Your Honor, any more than you can turn away from the word and essence of the law. And both the word and essence of the law, of the ancient laws of our land, of the universal laws of human rights and indigenous peoples, as recognized by the United Nations and the laws of the United States of America and the state of Hawaii, are very clear that I was at all times within my rights and never at any time in violation of any law of any kind. I am in this court today under duress. Legally, my country, Hawaii, is not a part of the United States of America. It is an independent, peaceful nation under a military occupation that has now lasted well over a century. While our protest is peaceful, the simple truth is that the United States and the state of Hawaii have no legitimate sovereign authority over me. What the United States and the state of Hawaii do have legal authority over and responsibility for are the actions of the agents of those governments. There are many laws that should have borne on those agents at that time, which seem on May 1st, 2012, to have been disregarded. The United States First Amendment right to free speech should have protected me.
I don't understand your argument. On one hand, you reject the United States and the laws of Hawaii as a Hawaiian sovereign.
Yes.
And now you're saying that the First Amendment right is applicable?
What I said is that the agents of law enforcement and upholding the law, such as this court, such as the police, that the laws of the United States and the state of Hawaii do apply to those entities because they are within the structure of that country.
And what about everyone else?
Everyone else? First of all, everyone is obligated to follow pono. Everyone is. Secondly, Hawaiian nationals are obligated to exist and survive within a system, acknowledging that there is an occupation of our land right now, and that we cannot fight violently against that occupation. Our queen specifically asked us not to. We do protest peacefully. The occupying power does not have sovereign authority, and this is true of any occupation, over the people that it's occupying. It's there as a de facto force. However, that occupying power does have authority over its own employees, agents, and structures. And it has an obligation to follow its own mandates, just as any organization does.
I'm sorry to have you digress. Go ahead, you can finish your closing.
Okay. What the United States and the state of Hawaii do have legal authority over and responsibility for are the actions of the agents of those governments. There are many laws that should have borne on those agents at that time, which were apparently disregarded on May the 1st, 2012. The United States First Amendment right to free speech should have protected me. In other words, those police did have an obligation to uphold the Constitution of their government. The United States First Amendment right to free assembly should have protected our group. The United States First Amendment right to freedom of religion should have stopped the police from interrupting my quiet prayer and thereby desecrating the kanawai. The Hawaii State Constitution likewise prohibits searches, seizures, and invasion of privacy in Article 1, Section 7. The entire United States Bill of Rights is likewise reflected in corresponding sections. Both the U.S. and state constitutions, therefore, clarify the rights that I already hold under my own ancient kanawai. In addition, the state constitution guarantees traditional rights of cultural practice in Article 7, Section 12, and elsewhere. These rights are also guaranteed by the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, to which the U.S. is a signatory, which states, for example, in Article 8, Section 1, that indigenous peoples and individuals have the right not to be subjected to forced assimilation or destruction of their culture. Article 8, Section 2D further states that states shall provide effective mechanisms of prevention for any form of forced assimilation or integration. This applies to both the free exercise of kanawai mamalahoi and those practices which it protects, which the kanawai protects, including pule. Similarly, the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 3, guarantees the right to life, liberty, and security of person, and Article 9 of the Declaration on Human Rights states that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Article 18 states that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom, either alone or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. On the municipal level, we're talking about the city and county of Honolulu. Meanwhile, the city's own charters and laws clearly support my rights. According to the revised ordinance of Honolulu, Chapter 2, Article 32, Section 2-32.1, and elsewhere, public activity, in quotes, means any activity, condition, or location that is not a private activity, condition, or location. The term private activity, condition, or location shall not be deemed to include any streets, sidewalks, or other places owned or controlled by the city or another governmental entity, or streets, sidewalks, or other places owned or controlled by private entities but open to the general public. Clearly, Kapi'olani Park falls into this activity, into this area, and the activities that were happening that day fall clearly into public activity. Lay Day at Kapi'olani Park is clearly a public activity at which I had every right to interact with other members of the public, including the mayor, who is subject to the revised charter of the City and County of Honolulu, which specifically states in Section 11-101, Declaration of Policy, elected and appointed officers and employees shall demonstrate by their example the highest standards of ethical conduct, to the end that the public may justifiably have trust and confidence in the integrity of government. They, as agents of public purpose, shall hold their offices or positions for the benefit of the public, shall recognize that the public interest is their primary concern, and shall faithfully discharge the duties of their offices regardless of personal considerations. Section 11-104, Fair and Equal Treatment, states that, specifically states that elected or appointed officers or employees shall not use their official positions to secure or grant special consideration, treatment, advantage, privilege, or exemption to themselves or any person beyond that which is available to every other person. And subsection 13-101, subsection 4A, specifically defines those officers, as noted above, to include the mayor. Therefore, it is clear that Mayor Peter Carlisle, according to the Charter of the City and County of Honolulu, is a citizen like anyone else, with no greater privilege than any other citizen, and certainly no legal right to use the Honolulu Police Department as personal security, and most certainly not at a public event. As there was no history of violence on my part, no threatening behavior, no TRO, no accusation of harassment, not even a conveyed request coming from Mr. Carlisle, I had every right to expect that I was perfectly within my legal right to speak to him, particularly while he was shaking hands with what would certainly, at first blush, appear to be members of the public. In addition, that expectation was confirmed by a personal, verbal, recorded dialogue with Honolulu Police Department Captain Borges, the single highest ranking police officer at the entire event, who was told by us on video that we intended to try to peacefully speak with the mayor and educate the public, that we believed it was our legal right to do so, that we were totally nonviolent, did not intend to disrupt anyone, to which he replied that he liked us and stated that we were within our First Amendment rights to continue what we were doing. He told us that we were okay, and demonstrated this by taking a picture with our group before letting us go on to fulfill our stated intention of speaking to the mayor with no warnings, no threat of arrest, and no legal admonishments or expressed concerns. Given this clarity—
Ms. Teal, I do not recall that statement being part of the record at all, so please—
Which statement?
That police captain you cited to said that he knew that you were going to go unannounced and try to talk to the mayor on that day.
It is in the record, Your Honor.
There's only hearsay, which was objected to by the prosecutor.
It was on the video.
I don't
And it
recall
was
him
shown—
saying that. I don't recall him saying that, and I don't recall that video portion being a part of this record unless I missed it.
I believe you must
Volume
have,
3.
Your Honor, because it was a major part of my questioning Mr. Matsuoka, and and we did show the video, and we showed him saying that we had First Amendment rights, and then releasing us.
That part was all hearsay, and that was prior to. So, okay, go ahead, but please be careful. You may think, I hope you kept track of what is in evidence and what is not, because everything that was sustained means it's not in. If it's overruled, that means it comes in, okay?
That was definitely in the evidence,
Well,
for certain.
I hope you're citing correctly. I have 29 pages of notes that I took of this
Okay.
entire case, so go ahead, I'm sorry, please continue.
Okay.
Don't worry, I'm listening to everything you say.
Okay. Okay, so he stated that we were within our First Amendment rights to do what we were doing. He allowed us to go on, fulfill our stated intention with no warnings, no threat of arrest, no legal admonishments. Given this clarity, an authorized arrest would be nothing short of entrapment. An unauthorized arrest would be a reflection of poor communication and respect within HPD. Either way, I am not guilty of any crime. The Honolulu Police Department and the Department of Parks and Recreation, by their own testimony, knew about this protest and our intent to request that the city simply return the property that had been seized without regard to ordinance. At the latest, they were well aware of this by 4:30 a.m. on May 1st. That gave them ample time to address this matter in a much more appropriate manner than manhandling and arrest, as is required by the due process clauses of the 8th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution before my First and Fourth Amendment rights could be limited in any way. They could have talked to me well before any confrontation happened. They did not. They could have set up an actual appointment with an actual reasonable time and place so that the matter could be resolved. They did not. They could have given me an actual warning, and I should say on that one, if it were actually possible to do so as they testified. They could have given me an actual warning that I would be arrested if I sat down or did anything else that I did at the time. They did not. They could have answered my questions about what laws prevented me from doing what I was doing. They did not. They could have called in their own civil affairs division who are trained in working with protesters. They did not. In short, knowing full well our legitimate intent, neither HPD nor any part of the city and county of Honolulu did anything to prevent the situation as they are required to do by law, rather than violate my constitutional rights. In fact, with this in mind, if there was any reckless disregard for the public, it was clearly on the city's part and not on mine. Not only were my rights violated, but HPD created, whether deliberately or through gross vocational habit, what was proved to be an utter fabrication to support that violation of my rights. Officer Duarte testified that I, quote, interrupted hula dancers, unquote, performing on stage, and that I did this, quote, 3 to 5 times, unquote, at, quote, 2 to 3 minutes per time, unquote, and that I, quote, had to be removed each time, unquote. He testified that, quote, you stopped whatever was happening on stage at that time multiple times. They had to address you because you were on the stage and the kids were in front of the stage. He further testified that I was, quote, blocking the view of the stage. At the top of the stairs was, quote, yelling and, quote, loud and disruptive, and that the audience members were, quote, missing their children and grandchildren perform because, quote, the hula dancers had to stop. None of this is true. I never stopped the program. I never stood between any children or any other performers and the audience at any time. I never went up the stairs at all. No one removed me, addressed me, warned me, or spoke with me at all, save Captain Borges, who simply ascertained that we were peaceful and assured us that what we were doing was legal. I never blocked the view of any performers, children or adults, was never loud and disruptive, and was not yelling. All of this is proven by both witness testimony and video, which shows the entire time we were in the stage area, which was approximately 3 minutes for that entire time. The video shows us earlier crossing the walkway twice, once during a break in performance where there was absolutely nothing going on stage, and while the walkway was totally full of other people who were also milling about, talking to each other and taking pictures. And once extremely briefly where there was nothing happening on stage. There were no performances happening on stage at that time either. Both of these took place in a very reasonable manner on a public walkway, did not block anything, and none were disruptive whatsoever. Officer Duarte went on to say that the mayor was sitting with his wife at the time of my arrival, which was also the testimony of Officer Suoto, rather than walking about shaking hands, as the video and the witness the testimony of all of my witnesses clearly shows Officer Duarte's version of the arrest, about which he testified that he was absolutely certain, went like this in this order. First, he said, we placed her under arrest for disorderly conduct. Then, secondly, she felt that she shouldn't be arrested. Then, that she sat on the ground at that point. Then, that we told her to just stand up and walk away. Then, that she didn't want to. What she did from a sitting position was, and that was clarified in my questioning of him, was she moved again toward the mayor. All of that was all shown to be incorrect by both testimony and video evidence. Again, this just simply never happened. The police did not put me under arrest until long after they had already carried me away from the area where I had been sitting peacefully among other members of the public, posing no threat to anyone. There was only one warning in the entire event, and this is when Officer Duarte can be heard to say, "You touch my weapon one more time, you will get arrested," which in itself is problematic, as the video clearly shows that I never did touch his weapon in the first place or come near it. What I do think Officer Duarte testified accurately to was that he was at the event specifically to protect the mayor from me, that he does not know what a conch is used for, and that he does not know of, and that he did not know of those expressing discontent, whether any of them were members of the public or city employees. And I should mention that Officer So'oto also said the exact same thing, that there was no knowledge of who was a city employee or and who was a simple member of the public. It's been established that I had no other choice than my actions, but the officers did have a choice. Spiritual practitioner and fellow minister Martin Luther King quoted Dante in saying that the hottest place in hell is reserved for people who remain neutral during great moral conflict. As a spiritual practitioner, I could not do anything other than what I did while I remained peaceful the entire time. The police, on the other hand, are bound by an entirely different set of rules. They are bound by the due process requirements of the 5th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution of the U.S. government, which currently is the occupying power in Hawaii and which they have all sworn to uphold. I'd like to mention that Officer So'oto, similarly, that his testimony was also proved not to be true. He testified that he said 5 times that he would set something up and, quote, tried to help her out. This is not true, and it was shown by the video evidence and the testimony of the witnesses. He said that I sneaked through, where on the video I can be heard very clearly saying that I was going through in order not to disturb people, and that was my reason. It was not sneaking in any way. I made my intentions extremely clear. He said that I kept trying to approach the mayor from the front. That's not true. I sat down on the ground among other members of the public, which I had every right to do. It only shows me moving in that direction at all at a time when a woman can be seen who is physically grabbing me, which I moved away from. Contrary to Officer So'oto's testimony that it was in a non-public area where no one else was sitting, in a perfectly, this was in a perfectly legal public area where many people were sitting. And I want to point out, Your Honor, that this needs to be one or the other. Either way, I am innocent. If this was a public area, then I had every right to sit there. If this was not a public area, then there was no public alarm, which is required by the statute in order to even prosecute me. So in either case, I am not guilty of any crime. There is not one instance, as shown on video, where the officer said that I was under arrest until well after I was carried away. And this is also reflected by the witness testimony. In other words, I was not carried away because I had broken the law. I was carried away because the officers simply wanted to remove me. This is not how officers of the peace are supposed to treat the people not how they're supposed to treat the people at all, under any circumstances. Officer So'oto also testified that the mayor was sitting down at the time that I approached, where the video and the witness testimony clearly shows him shaking hands and interacting with people. Officer So'oto testified that he could say for a fact that he never told me that there were no charges, and that I was not told that there were no charges after the time that I was arrested, which he testified occurred prior to them first attempting to lift me off the ground. The video shows him saying this twice after that time. Twice he said, "There are no charges." Officer So'oto testified that they were that they were there as regular event security, whereas Officer Duarte testified that they were there specifically to deal with me and with us. So their testimonies are inconsistent, even though they were from the same unit and arrived together. Officer So'oto testified that he told me 5 times again that he could set something up with the mayor, which was not true. As shown on video of the entire interaction, he did not say it. Secondly, and this is not the time, place does not count. Secondly, even if this were true, even if he did tell me this, it would not have been true. Frankly, it would have been an absolute untruth, because he testified that he had not received any such clearance from the mayor. So he is testifying at that point that he is saying something untrue. Officer So'oto also testified that he was aware of the Civil Affairs Division. He testified that he knew what they did, and he described it, but that they were not called. He testified that Captain Borges, the ranking officer at the event, informed them that we would be trying to speak with the mayor and instructed them to guard him from us. So apparently, when we spoke with Captain Borges, and it is shown on the video that he said that he would respect our rights, either he was not telling the truth or Officer So'oto was not telling the truth. Officer So'oto Sorry, I'm trying to read my writing. Okay, both Officer So'oto and Officer Duarte testified that they did not know who any of the people in that general area were. So therefore, they do not know whether those were actual members of the public or officials. And the law, I should mention, is very, very clear on that point. What I'm being charged with is 711-1101, disorderly conduct, which specifically states that a person commits the offense of disorderly conduct if with intent to cause physical inconvenience or alarm by a member or members of the public, so intent to cause physical inconvenience or alarm, or recklessly creating a risk thereof, the person also then, and I'm being charged with section A, which says engages in fighting or threatening or in violent or tumultuous behavior, of which I think we've well established that I was not doing any of whatsoever. And that because this, as this is being charged as a petty misdemeanor, the state would have to prove that it is the defendant's intention to cause substantial harm or serious inconvenience, or persist in disorderly conduct after reasonable warnings and requests to desist, that those are requests to desist. That did not happen. Every time a request was made, I followed it. When I was told to, that there was a problem with blocking the area, I crouched down. When I was told to exit the area, I exited the area and I sat down. I don't think that there was anything there which fulfilled this statute whatsoever, and certainly was not, as required by statute, fighting or threatening or violent or tumultuous. This section requires, and this is in the commentary on this law, this section requires proof of an intent to cause physical inconvenience or alarm, or at least a reckless creation of a risk thereof. And a very important point about this is that this statute is aimed at actual fights and other behavior tending to threaten the public generally. For this section requires public alarm, as distinguished from the private alarm which may accompany assault. This is an important point. A person may not be arrested for disorderly conduct as a result of activity which annoys only the police, for example. And that also is upheld in that it may not be something that merely annoys a public official, and we cannot, the state has not established that there was anyone who was a public member who was not in such a capacity in that area at any time. And it says that such arguments are merely hazards of the trade which do not warrant criminal penalties. That and I should say that this was per an amendment made under Act 136, Session Laws 1973, in which the offense of disorderly conduct was amended to require an intent to cause physical inconvenience or alarm by members of the public. Previously, the offense merely required an intent to cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm, but that is not the case under the law as it currently stands. All right. Again, in all of this, it has been well established. There was no fighting, no threatening, no violent, no tumultuous behavior, no reckless behavior of any kind. At all times, it has been well established that I took every measure that I could to prevent harm to or inconvenience to anyone. Could I have done better? I'm human. I will easily state as a practitioner of pono and a practitioner of ho'oponopono, we all could probably do things with more finesse and style at any given moment. We're all learning. Looking back on the situation, perhaps there are a couple of things that I could have done differently, but none of them would have affected whether my actions were legal or not. My actions were never in any way illegal, no matter how you look at it. Therefore, I am absolutely in no way guilty of any crime. I do want to mention that Article 12, Section 7 of the Hawaii State Constitution guarantees my right to practice customary traditions, which would include prayer, especially as reasonably practiced at the time that I was kneeling, not blocking anyone's view, and otherwise attempting to be as non-disruptive as possible without going against the teachings of my very close mentors, including those who have passed, such as Kawaipuna Prajin, who was the primary organizer of the first mission to protect Ko'olave, and a peacemaker who laid much of the foundational work for the peace between the United States and Hawaii at the United Nations. Kamaka Hukilani Vonohafen, who educated people on every island. Kupuna Tom Maunu Pau, who dedicated his life to peaceful restoration of the practice of our inherent rights to self-determination. And also to kupuna who are living right now, such as Uncle Kekuni Blaisdell, with whom I was in communication during all of this. Uncle Kuching, Clarence Kuching, a former OHA trustee who I have spoken to with and worked with on Kanawai Mamalahoe.
You're kind of drifting now.
Okay, I'm concluding actually. The state constitution past decision further specifically states the state does not have the right to regulate the practices of Kanaka Maoli out of existence. My right and the rights of the Hawaiian people to the practice of ea are continual. Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. Ea, sovereignty, life breath of the land, is continued on forever through pono. E naka, e mālama oukou I ke akua, a e mālama ho'i ke kanaka nui, a me kanaka iki. A hele, ka elemakule, ka luahine, a me ke kama, Amoe I ke ala. A ohe, mea, nana, e opilikia. Hewa no make.
Okay, thank you. Any rebuttals, prosecutor?
Very briefly, Your Honor. seems that the defendant conveniently, in her closing statement, puts the onus and responsibility on everyone else. Defendant isn't denying that she blew the conch shell, that she knelt down and started praying and chanting, that she, at this point, was between the rows, that
The program was going on. To me, that shows pure disrespect for the program that was in place, a program for which your own family participates in. That's what accordingly, and you know, you say that the conch, yes, I understand a practitioner would never use a conch as a weapon. But you know what? Kamehameha the Great was struck with an implement that was never intended to be used as a weapon either. And he forgave that person. And that is the law of the splintered paddle. Accordingly, I find that the state has proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. I find you guilty as charged of the crime charged, disorderly conduct, pursuant to HRS 711-1101.